I pushed open the heavy, rusted iron door. The house was dark and filled with dust. I was just looking for my lost smartphone, rummaging through the old storage room. Instead, I found this ancient, black, cordless phone buried under a pile of forgotten junk. I plugged it in and nervously waited for a connection. Someone finally answered, but it wasn't the person who found my phone. It was a girl crying. She was screaming that her mother was trying to kill her. I thought it was a wrong number. My own reality was already falling apart. My mother was sitting in a hospital bed, dying of a brain tumor. I felt nothing but coldness towards her. I blamed her for the fire. I visited my father's grave alone, the pain of losing him never really fading. When I returned to that empty house, the old phone started ringing violently. It was that same desperate girl again. She yelled that she was being burned alive. Then she mentioned an address. It was the exact same address as my house. Her name was Young Suk. She was living in this very house. But she was living here 20 years ago in 1999. She was trapped. Her adoptive mother, a local shaman, kept her locked in a hidden basement behind a brick wall. I could almost feel the terror she experienced. The shaman tortured her daily. She believed Young Suk was possessed by evil spirits. Through that old receiver, we finally realized the impossible truth. We were connected across time. I sat at my modern computer. I warned her about a plane crash that was about to happen. When she heard the breaking news on her old CRT television, she finally believed me. We were both 28 years old. We became unlikely friends. I played Seo Taiji's futuristic rock music for her through the speaker. She couldn't comprehend the technology of my era. I shared my deepest trauma with her. I told her how my father died in a gas explosion because of my mother's carelessness. Then, she came up with a crazy, dangerous idea. In 1999, my family actually visited this house to buy it. Young Suk saw my dad, my mom, and the little version of me. She whispered through the phone that she could catch him. She promised to stop the explosion and bring my father back to life. Suddenly, the reality around me began to violently disintegrate. The floorboards, the walls, everything dissolved into burning embers and rebuilt itself. The gloomy, dusty mansion transformed in an instant. It became a bright, luxurious, and incredibly warm home. I ran outside to the glass greenhouse, and there they were. My mother was healthy, and my father was smiling, alive and well. I threw myself into his arms, sobbing like a child. I clutched the phone and thanked Young Suk from the bottom of my heart. I finally experienced the perfect family dinner I had dreamed of for 2 decades. I was so consumed by my new happiness. I started ignoring the ringing phone, but Young Suk was still trapped in her dark, abusive nightmare. When I finally answered, she was furious. She screamed at me, cursing me for abandoning her. Her adoptive mother was performing a brutal, terrifying exorcism on her, convinced she was a demon. I frantically searched the internet. The news archive said the shaman murdered her daughter that very night. I couldn't just let her die. I called her and screamed, warning her to run for her life. That night, the shaman crept into her room with a sharp blade. She stabbed the bed repeatedly in the dark, but Young Suk wasn't there. She stepped out from the shadows. She didn't just survive the attack. She embraced the absolute monster hiding inside her. She fought back with a fire extinguisher. She overpowered the shaman and brutally bludgeoned her to death. After committing murder, she walked out onto the sunny street, feeling completely reborn. In my timeline, a kind local farmer brought us fresh strawberries. In 1999, that exact same man delivered strawberries to Young Suk. He asked to put them in the refrigerator. There, he discovered black plastic bags leaking blood and human hair. Young Suk couldn't let a witness walk away alive. She cornered him. Back in my present, I noticed something was horribly wrong. I asked my dad about the strawberry farmer, but he looked confused. I ran to the old greenhouse where he used to work. It was abandoned, a completely destroyed ruin. I rushed to the police station to ask about him. The officer told me he died 20 years ago. He was murdered and dismembered. In 1999, a young police officer came knocking on her door, investigating the missing farmer. I called her, my voice shaking with fear. I asked her if she really killed them. I looked up her ultimate fate on my computer. She was eventually caught and sentenced to life in prison. When I told her that, she went completely psychotic. She demanded that I find out what exact evidence the police used to catch her. She reminded me, with a sinister smile, that she saved my father's life. I hung up on her, terrified of what I had unleashed. In response, she started smashing her kitchen, taking her rage out on the dead body. Then, the unthinkable happened. My dad and the younger version of me showed up at her house. They were there to view the property. She invited them inside. History began rewriting itself instantly. I was in the car with my dad, and suddenly his face turned into a charred, rotting nightmare. The car crashed. Water flooded in. The reality I knew was violently slipping away into nothingness. I rushed back to the mansion. only to find it a ruined, dusty shell again. I picked up the ringing phone. She laughed at my pain and described exactly how my father died. She gave me a deadline of 1 hour to find the police evidence, or she would torture the younger me. I frantically searched the police archives and old newspapers. I had to trick her. I gave her the address of an abandoned greenhouse. I knew from the records that it was going to explode at exactly 5 o'clock. The greenhouse blew up in a massive, fiery explosion. I thought I had finally killed her, but she survived the blast. She called me, her voice dripping with venom and revenge. She dragged the younger me into the kitchen. She boiled a pot of scalding hot water, and she poured it directly over the little girl. My skin in the present instantly blistered and burned. The agony was beyond unbearable. I couldn't just sit there and be tortured to death. I broke into the police station. I discovered that a local scrap collector had picked up her bloody knife, but she figured it out and found him first. She killed him and reclaimed the weapon. In my timeline, the house warped into a terrifying neon-lit maze of refrigerators. She had been preserving the dismembered bodies for decades. My mother, desperately worried about me, went to the house with a police officer in 1999. I grabbed the glowing phone and called her. I screamed for her to run away from that monster, but it was too late for the cop. Young Suk slashed his throat, blood spraying everywhere. My mother ran upstairs, completely terrified and bleeding. She locked herself in a room, bracing the door with a metal bar. I stayed on the phone, trying to guide her through the terror. I told her to grab the heavy fire extinguisher. Young Suk violently hacked through the wooden door with an axe. But when the door broke open, my mother saw the younger me tied up on the floor. She dropped her weapon, rushing forward to protect her child. Young Suk attacked without mercy. In a desperate, sacrificial move, my mother grabbed her. They both plummeted off the second-floor balcony together. I woke up. The house was dead, silent, and empty. I ran to the cemetery as fast as I could, but she was there. My mother was alive. She scolded me for not answering my phone. She always did. I hugged her tight, believing we had finally defeated the nightmare. But the timeline hadn't finished correcting its twisted logic. In the past, Young Suk had warned her future self to hold onto the phone no matter what. As we walked away from the grave, my mother suddenly faded into nothingness. I was left completely alone, trapped forever in a hell created by a single phone call.